Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Mental Toughness and Body Show. As you can see on screen today, I have Shani Taylor, who won Global Coach of the Year in 2024. What an achievement. Shani, we're going to dig into your story in a minute, but thank you so much for joining me on the show.
Well, thank you for having me, Rob. I mean, you're an incredible human being with amazing light around you. So I so appreciate you asking me to be on the pod.
Thank you. So let's dig into your story a little bit because not that long ago, I didn't know who you were. And then you, just like everybody has a story, I thought I'd do a little bit of research on you. And I'm like, oh my goodness, where you've come from to where you are now is just incredibly inspirational. Hence why I reached out to you. Would you like to perhaps just share a little bit about your journey, and then we'll dig into it from there?
Yeah, and I think you made a really important comment there, which is that we all have a story, right? And one of the things that I find often when I do share about, my backstory is, and you obviously know it, I mean, it's fairly significant in terms of just, trauma after trauma. And I find that sometimes people hear the story and then they minimize their own experiences as though, oh, well, mine weren't that bad.
Yeah.
So, right. So I just want to kind of put a caveat on that every single one of us does have a story. And while the external circumstances are different for each person, I think underneath the intangible experience, I think we're all having a similar experience whereby we're just trying to feel safe in the world, safe in our bodies, safe in our minds, and just really find our place where we belong.
Yeah, absolutely. I just recorded another podcast today where I said, you know what? So often each week I get kicked in the nuts and punched in the heart, and you've got to find a way to get through it. But it doesn't matter how big it is, whether it's different to me, different to yours. It leaves an impact, and it's how that impact rests with you and how you respond to it, as you have, that really makes the difference.
Yeah. So look, five years ago, I was literally broke. I was living in a rental property that had mold all over the walls. The outlook from the lounge room was a derelict set of shops that, was run down and fenced off and had graffiti everywhere. And that really was because of where I'd come from, which was, being born into super low socioeconomic, like I was born in Mount Druitt in Sydney, which for the international listeners, I often liken it to Compton in America. I mean, it has the highest rate of homicide in Sydney out of all suburbs, and it has for the last 40 plus years. So just to kind of give a gauge on, on where I was born into. And, there's just significant experiences throughout the course of my life through homelessness and drug addiction and experiences leaving me with PTSD. So up until 5 years ago, I still thought like a broke person. I still had a victim mentality. But I knew it was time to make a change. And we fast forward to us sitting here today. And, as you shared, I was awarded Global Coach of the Year by the Duchess of York in London halfway through last year. I grew my business from 0 to 7 figures in the space of 2 years. We've now got clients in 24 countries around the world. And I'm an international speaker, and I'm having a great time, Rob.
Yeah, I thought you were about to say I'm an international superstar, which you are.
Maybe next time we're having a conversation on a podcast or an interview or something, maybe I'll be big enough then that I can say I'm an international
Superstar. So maybe let's go back. So I have read in your story, obviously the impact that children have on our lives and so forth.
Yeah.
And I think in many ways life comes down to moments, right? And those moments where you could quite easily still be living that homeless lifestyle. Well, to be frank, you may not even be here if you were continuing to live that lifestyle. What was I'm sure you remember it. What was the moment where you said, "No, I'm never doing this again. I'm changing forever"?
So it's such a great point, and I think it's like you're right. There's moments that happen in our life that really define. It's like the moment creates the thought, that creates the decision, that creates the commitment, that creates the action. It's kind of like because you can have a moment but do nothing with it, or
That's right.
you can have a moment and have a thought that you want to do something different, but then if there's no commitment, it stops there. Or you can have the moment to have the thought and then you make a commitment, but then commitment is only as good as the decision to actually take the action and then follow through with it, right? So there's this whole, and your left brain, your accountant left brain must be loving this equation, surely, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's been multiple moments over the course of my life, but I think where it really started, I think that the first moment where I knew that I was committed to change and changing where I've come from was definitely the moment that I decided to have my son. You know, you touched on having children. And, you know, I was with Mark Boris yesterday and we were having this conversation because he was like, well, but how did you stop taking drugs? You know, and similarly, we were talking about this, you've got to, if you decide to be a drug addict, and I know this will be controversial, but the same person that decided to be a drug addict can also decide not to be a drug addict.
Yeah.
You know, and for me, my son has just been the absolute driving force for wanting to be a better human in the world all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so beautiful. I mean, I shared this off screen, but my Liv, who anyone that's been listening for a while now knows her story, but because of everything that she went through, it's made me a better person and makes me want to be better for everybody else as well. And it's something I work on every single day, just to be better. How can I have an impact? You know, what can I say to Shani today to help put a smile on your face or make you feel heard or, you know, valued? That's something that's really important to me.
Well, you definitely did a good job of that, Rob, because before we started our conversation, you shared very, you know, very openly. I definitely felt seen. So thank you.
Yeah, beautiful. I wanted to ask you because, you know, people listen here all the time. I've done one or almost 4,000 podcasts now.
What?
And so, you know, you can sit on, say, the other side of success. Like if this is the line of success and, oh, hang on, yeah, you're on this side of success. And you're on the other side and you think about it. And I think a lot of, I don't know what your experience is, but I think a lot of people think about success as money. And the interesting thing that you and I know, like you talk to billionaires and hear people that are the best in the world at what they do, whether it's acting, science, whatever, and not one of them talks about money. And so I'm just interested in your thought now as to, can you remember what your mindset was on the other side versus of success, what that would look like for you and what it does actually look like for you now?
So pre success, or you know, pre who I am now, what my mind used to think about was, you know, how I had it so tough and poor me, and you know, if I'd only had a better upbringing, life would be easier, and you know, and then just was looking to not deal with it and was finding ways unhealthy addictions to escape, whether it was alcohol, food, drugs, you know, it's just that whole dissociation. And by the way, that's, I mean, I don't know about anybody else, but I think in Australia for sure, that's the culture. So you don't even realize that it's a problem because everybody else is doing it. Right? Everybody else is doing it when you're playing in those circles. When you move into a different circle and your life changes like it has for me, that's not the norm because I'm not associating with people that it is the norm for. But you know what I'm trying to do is get this contrast across, which is that even for anyone where they are today, it's like you may think certain things in your life are normal because everybody else around you is doing them, but it doesn't mean that it's actually good for you or that it's healthy, or it's like just because it's done this way doesn't mean it has to keep being done this way.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Right. And the problem is you're stuck in the situation. So you actually, it's called a blind spot for a reason. You can't see it. You don't even know that it's a problem until it's screaming at you. And so it's kind of like this, right? If you ask a fish in the ocean, how's the water? It doesn't even know that it's in water because it's just its way of being. It's not going to say what water. It's just going to go about its day. But it could be in a really unhealthy part of the ocean, the pond, whatever, but it won't know because it's in the water.
Yes.
It's kind of like us when we're in environments, we may not even realize that they're not the healthiest environments because it's just become the norm. And I think pre-success, the first hurdle is realizing that that's not how it has to be.
Yeah, beautifully said. I think one of the, talking about money, my money mindset as a young adult was really poor.
Yes.
Like, where did that come from? It came from mum and dad. And like, I pulled it apart recently. And the reason that I had that was we had my uncle, so my mum's brother, he was a wealthy businessman. Now, what mum and dad used to talk about was money equals mean,
Yeah.
because he was seen as being mean. We don't want to be mean, so therefore we will not do what he does. Now, they ended up being broke pretty much,
Mm.
and he went on to be really wealthy. Now, rather than them say, let's learn from him how he's built his wealth so we don't have those struggles that we're having at the moment. But they didn't. And then it wasn't until stepping out of that environment. So I went to uni to study accounting. And one of the very first subjects I did was called personal investment. It was like my favorite subject. And they're teaching us how, simple things like compounding of interest. And then it was like diversification and shares and real estate and all these different things. And I'm like, how come I'm only learning this now?
But see, by the way, you said that was a simple thing, but to somebody who's not in that world, and by the way, most people aren't taught those things unless they go to uni or pick up a book.
Yep.
So that's pure magic right there. Because by the way, what did Einstein say? Compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. He who knows it earns it, and he who doesn't pays it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's pure magic of the universe, of the world, and yet most of us do not understand it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think where do you think your hunger comes from? I'm just going to assume that you have the same sort of hunger as I do. But where does your hunger come from to say grow and learn and become a better version of you?
I talk about this a lot. And by the way, I want to sidestep it to say our poor parents, they cop all of it, don't they? It's like, I mean, even my parents, it's still to this day, I will say things that I know are probably offensive, and it's not meant to be offensive, but it's my truth, right?
Yes.
And when I say it, what poor parents, I mean, I think everybody does the best that they know how with what they've been
Yeah.
given. But I literally, from a young age, I looked around and I just knew that these were not my people. And I knew that I was meant for more. And I honestly thought that I was adopted because I was like, I do not belong here. And so I knew from a young age, and I think a lot of people can relate to this, like a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of people in their own business share the same sentiment. They look around at home, or they looked around at school. I was pretty much friendless. I was maybe had a couple of friends. I looked around, I was like, these are not my people. I don't belong here. So I knew I was meant for more, but you can know you were meant for more, but if you don't do anything about it, then it means nothing. Right. And so knowing versus doing equals having.
Yeah.
And, I think the hunger, I truly believe, is because I see myself as, like, how do I explain this in a way that even the left brainers won't go away and they'll get it, right? It's kind of like I just truly believe that I'm here to execute on a purpose that is bigger than me.
Yeah.
So therefore, my life is not, it's almost not mine. It's almost not for me. And so I have a responsibility to take care of myself mentally, physically, emotionally, and financially to execute the work that this physical being was put here to be the vehicle for.
Yeah, that's a really lovely way of expressing it. And I haven't thought about it in that way myself, but I can so relate to that and my own journey. It's a little bit no, it's not like that at all. I was thinking I heard somebody say this about like the estate that they owned, and they said that it's not theirs, they're just caretakers of it because it
Yes.
will pass on to someone else. And I thought, actually, I've never heard that somebody talk about that, but I really get that. Um, maybe we're related some way, even though you're quite tall and I'm very short. I can remember at the age of 11, because I was short, I was an easy target for bully. I was bullied and not treated well. I had no friends. I was not smart, and I didn't understand why I needed to learn about Ned Kelly and how that was going to take me through life to be a success. And I can remember this one day, I came home, had a really bad day. I was probably bullied. Went to my room. Mum yelled at me for something, and I'm like, "What's the purpose?" So I used to think, I hope I wake up dead, and then they'll be really sorry. And can remember thinking that, do you know what? I don't know what life has in store for me. This was like 11 or 12, but I said, I know it's not going to be always like this. And I
Yeah.
know that I'm destined for greatness somewhere. I just don't know what it is. And
Yeah.
I know that I'm going to keep moving forward and do it, even though it was still a bad day and whatever. I just knew that there was something greater for me.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally get it. And like I said, I think if you speak to any entrepreneurial business person, I think they share that sentiment that they just knew that they were meant for more.
What would you say is the greatest piece of advice you've ever received?
Oh gosh, I mean, how could you distill it down to one piece of advice? But the thing that comes into my brain that really stands out, speaking of the age of 11, when I was 11, I got given a copy of one of the greatest books of all time, How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I actually didn't, I had a lot of resistance to the book at the time because I was being bullied at school. I was being bullied at home. I hated life. I had a real chip on my shoulder about people. So I actually didn't want to make friends or influence people. I was like, I should be liked for who I am. And now I'm getting this book that says I've got to learn how to win friends. So I had a lot of resistance around the title. It's been a book that I revisit almost yearly because there is so much wisdom in there in really how to connect with other human beings.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think that book is, if people haven't read it, they definitely should. And it's a book that you can keep going back to throughout the years because it just goes deeper and deeper in terms of how you can connect with other humans.
I think one of the things that I felt like I used to be terrified of like public speaking and like just talking to people and everything. I did not have a lot of success in like dating or anything like that, which is like, wow, I just don't know how to talk to people. I felt weird, and people
Yeah.
used to tell me I was weird because I didn't drink and didn't smoke and didn't do all these things. And then I realized that I have a special gift, and like I've got a really huge heart. I might be small, but I've got a really huge heart.
Yeah.
And the key for me in building relationships with people is just to be really curious, and people just want to be heard.
Mm,
It just listen. So many people say to me, "You're such a good listener."
mm.
And then just like even in like preparing for this podcast, for instance, now I didn't do this when I first started, but I deliberately don't prepare too many questions because it forces me to just kind of lean in
Yeah.
and really listen to what it is that you're saying, so I can understand your perspective. What would you say is maybe if people are looking to build relationships with people, what's your tips on how to effectively do that?
Look, I think you have to get yourself into a mindset and a frequency of what can I give rather than what can I get. And
Yeah.
people think that they're doing it, but they don't realize that they're not. And I'll give you an example. So you and I are part of a WhatsApp group chat that has hundreds of members in it.
Yes.
And I received a text message. So what's happened over the weekend is somebody in that group took my mobile number out of the chat and sent me a text message. And I've never had a conversation with them before. And there's no message history. There's no thread whatsoever. And they said to me, basically, hey, Shani, I saw your post on the weekend, or I saw your post the other day about, you said that you channel instead of manifest. This is exactly what I help my clients with. Would you be open to me speaking to your community about how I could help them channel?
Yeah, absolutely. No problem.
Now, there's a couple of things wrong with this, Rob. Number one, total lack of situational awareness, because if I'm talking about the fact that I channel, I teach my community how to do the damn thing, right?
Yeah.
Number one. But number two, this person, I truly believe, had good intentions. They thought that they were doing me a favor, but that was them trying to get something from me rather than give me something. So here's what it looks like. If you want to build and by the way, they hadn't even commented on my post.
Yeah.
Where was the value add?
Yeah.
Right? So if you want to build relationship, you've got to work out, what does that person care about? Not to do with what you've got to offer directly. What do they care about? And then go and provide value on that first.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Love that. I'm conscious that you've got another meeting to go to in a moment. I'm going to ask you one more question.
Go for it.
What would you say if somebody's sitting there on, they're going through adversity, they're like, oh, this sounds really good, but like you said at the start, if you don't take action, this is going to be meaningless. And so they're procrastinating and everything. What would you say to those people right now to get them to spring into some type of action, like by the end of this recording?
Yeah, that's great. So here's what I would say. Your mind is your most powerful tool, but sometimes you've got to change your state to shift your mind. So sometimes you have to go through the body to get to the mind. And what I mean by that is you've literally got to get up and you've got to move the body to move the mind. And if you're facing adversity, nobody should be without a coach or a mentor in any area of their life that they want to grow. So if you want to be better mentally, you need to have a mentor. If you want to be better in your business, you need to have a mentor. So don't go it alone.
Yeah, beautifully said. And as a live example, we didn't talk about this before, but as a live example of adding value, I like to add value to all of my guests. And that's a nice segue how you finished there. Shani is like the global leader in coaching in 2024. I hear so many great stories about how you work with your clients, Shani. Do you have, I want to try and help you get some more clients. So what is the best way for people to reach out to you? I know you're always doing some free Zooms and that kind of stuff. So what, if people want to get a taste of what it is that you do, what's the best way for them to reach out?
Thanks, Rob. So we do free stuff every single month, both in person and online. So people can go to shanitaylor.com and the very front page there is going to tell you what you can register either for free, online, or in person.
Fantastic. Nice and simple. I'm going to put that link in the comments below here. Shani, we could talk for hours. I just love your energy. I love what you've been able to do and be able to turn your life around for your son. It's Oscar, isn't it?
It is. Thank you.
Yeah. So, a small bit of trivia. If I had two girls, but if it was a boy, Oscar was going to be the name.
It's a great name. It's a great name.
So thank you so much. It's been a privilege to have you on the show today, and thank you for adding so much value to the audience.
Thanks, Rob.